This is the second tutorial that I'm shooting for Python basics. In this tutorial, we'll be learning some more things about Python basics. Okay, so let's start with Python indentation first. What is Python indentation? See, indentation refers to the spaces at the beginning of a code line. Python uses indentation to indicate a block of code. Okay, remember this thing. Now let me explain you this thing with the help of an example. If suppose you define an if loop, okay, like this. And why we use if loop for? We use if loop for checking whether a particular condition is true or not. So this thing is not true right now. Let me make it true. Yep. So for this condition is true right now. Okay, so how can you print something if this condition is true? So for doing that, just a second, we need to place a colon 2 like this. Okay, once you're done with defining the condition, you need to place a colon, and after that you need to hit the enter button in order to come on the second line. Okay, now when you will write down the second line, you have to make sure that you give some space from this border of this idle platform, which is visible to you guys. From here you have to give some space. Okay, by default Python gives 4 spaces for one indentation. Fine. So right now there are 4 spaces in between this border and this pointer over here. Okay, so make sure if you want something to behave as a child part for something which you have defined, so you need to give some space. Then only the part which you will define here, it is going to act as a child for this parent. Okay, now let me show it to you practically. How are we going to get the output? 5 is greater than 2. Okay, this is what I have written over here. Now this whole line is going to act as a child for this thing which we have defined here. In other languages, what happens in other languages, we guys use curly brackets, right? And after that we put some statement like this, cout. For example, if we'll talk about C++, so we make use of some things like this. 3 is greater than 2. Okay, something like this we do, and then we enclose this statement inside this if loop using these 2 curly brackets, right? That's how we define the code on other platforms. On Python, what happens, we don't use curly brackets. In place of that, we use indentation, and indentation is a space which you are seeing over here. Okay, now if you will press enter button, you will be able to see the output like this. Similarly, if suppose you want to define 2 different if loops, let's say a nested loop if you want to create, so how can you do that? For doing that, let's define a condition first for this if loop. So remember this thing, you need to put a colon after this condition which you have defined for this if loop, and then let's copy this part from here and I'm going to put it here. Now when you will hit enter button, automatically this pointer is going to come just below this P of print. Fine, you have to start writing the next if loop from here only. Okay, because we want this if loop to behave as a child for this parent if loop. This is what nested loop is all about. Nested loop is loop inside a loop. Okay, now this loop is going to behave as a child for this if loop. Let's now print something. So automatically when you will hit enter button, this pointer is going to come here. Let's copy this whole line and let's put it here, and in place of this 5 let's write down 4, and in place of this 2 let's write down 3. Okay, 4 is greater than 3. Now let's see what are we going to get as an output. So this is what you will get as an output. 5 is greater than 2. Why we guys are not getting this thing as an out in the output part? Just because this condition which we have defined over here is not true. Let's make it true. Define this if loop one more time. If 5 is greater than 3, then print 5 is greater than 3. Okay, and then again I'm going to define an if loop. 4 is greater than 3. Then what should happen? This should be visible as an output to us. 4 is greater than 3. Now let's check what are we going to get as an output. So now we are getting the correct output. Okay, so that's how you need to take care. You need to define this indentation part also. You need to take care about this while you're working on this Python platform. Otherwise you're going to get these kind of errors while you will execute your code. Remember this thing. Next thing that we are going to talk about is comments. Comments can be used to explain Python code. Okay, if you have defined any code over here, and if you want to tell the user who is actually using your program that why have you used a particular code in your program. So in order to do that, you can make use of comment. Now how can you write down a comment? How can you make something a comment on this Python platform? So for doing that, what we can do, let's write down this thing first. Print. Okay, let's write down this first. If loop, then if 5 is smaller than 8, then we want this thing to get printed. Print 5 is smaller than 8. Okay, so this thing is going to get reflected as an output. Now if we want to tell the user that the purpose for which we have made use of this if loop, if you want to tell the user the purpose of this if loop, what you can do, you can make use of comments. How can you define a comment? How can you define a single line comment? So for that you can make use of this hash keyword, and if loop is used for checking the condition. Okay, so this is going to act as a comment. Now if you will run the program, what you're going to get is an output. This is what you're going to get as an output. Now what is this line doing? It is actually telling the user, it is actually telling you guys that why I have used this if loop. So that is the reason comments also play a very important role in programming. Fine. Now if suppose instead of defining a single line comment, if you want to put a multiple line comment for this code, how can you do that? So for doing that, you can make use of hash if loop is, this is the first thing that I'm mentioning. If you want to mention one more thing, you can. So this is how you can bifurcate this line into 3 different lines. Now I've converted this line of comment into a multi-line comment. Okay, you are going to get the same output. Don't worry about the output. Now let's, is there any other way we can define a multi-line comment? Yes, there is one more way. We are going to check the second method with which we can insert comments, a multi-line comment on this Python idle platform. So first of all, I'm going to define an if loop. Let it be like this. Let the condition be like this, and so we are going to print this thing 5. If you want to write down a comment in between these 2 lines, how can you do that? We have made use of comments for checking a condition. Fine, so this is how you can write it down. And now if you want to convert these 2 lines into comments, what you can do, you need to press Alt and 3. Okay, these 2 keys you have to press together, Alt plus 3. Automatically these 2 things are going to get converted into comments. And if you want to remove these comments, what you can do, you can press Alt and 4 together, and these 2 comments will get removed. So why we guys use comments? In order to tell the user why we have used a particular code or code for defining the solution of a particular problem the user has given us. Fine. These comments are used mainly in companies. So when you will be working in companies and you will have to explain your coding to a person, at that point of time these comments are going to help you out, okay, for doing that. These are very important. Make sure that whenever you're writing any program in Python, you are making use of this comments also for explaining the purpose of the codes you have used in the program. Now let's execute this code and check out the output. We are getting a syntax error here. Why? Just because we haven't converted this thing into comments. So that is the reason we guys are getting an output, because the compiler of this platform is not able to understand this code over here. It is taking these 2 lines as codes. Then we print 5 is greater than 2. And after that, in between these 2 lines we can write down something. Let's write down these 2 lines. I'm copying these 2 lines and putting it over here. Fine. Okay, now let's convert these 2 lines into comments. So for that we need to press Alt and 3 together, and they will get converted into comments. And now let's hit this enter button and check out the output. So this is what we're going to get as an output. Fine, so this is how you can make use of comments. You can define comments on this Python idle platform. Okay, so in this lecture we learned about how can we make use of indentation for running the program, for running a particular program on this platform without getting any error. Besides, we learned this how can we define comments on this Python platform. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. Please do like and subscribe to my channel, and also share the video with your friends. Thank you very much, and God bless you all with a great future. Bye bye.